it's Maizie from Show Low Public Library, and we are back in the Show Low TV studio bringing you another episode of Healthy Cooking with Show Low Public Library. This cooking show is brought to us through the Charlie Cart Project, which the library received a grant through the National Library of Medicine to get the Charlie Cart, and now we are coming to you. So you might be watching on the City of Show Low Facebook page, the Show Low Public Library page. You might also be watching us on YouTube or on Sparklight Channel 56 or in HD 1056. We've got our chef with us today, and I'll let him introduce himself.
Hello, I'm Chef Smokin William Crawford. I'm the culinary arts teacher at Show Low High School. We are going to actually spend a little time doing some teaching today because I feel it's important that we understand what different measurements are and how to do different things. The first one is measuring dry products like flour. When we measure flour, I'm going to do it two ways, and we're going to just kind of dump it over here to get rid of it because we don't want to put it back in the bag. A lot of people have a bad habit of they will flatten out their flour like this. I'm trying to keep it in the bag without making a huge mess. And then they get it and they start tapping it. Well, the problem is if you tap it, you can see that the flour is actually starting to go down. They have a tendency to then go, oh, I need more flour. Well, by adding the additional flour, their product ends up being dry because they've got too much flour. So what you should do is just measure the flour, leave it airy, don't let it pack. Just measure the flour out and flatten it. Okay? You want to leave the air in the flour. So that's how we measure our flour. Now we're going to get some things out of the way so that they are not blocking our view. So Maisie's going to step off camera for a minute. And we want to talk about some measurements. These are teaspoons and tablespoons. Now I bring this to you this way because this last week I was in class with some students, and their measurement they were supposed to be making was a 1 teaspoon. They ended up using, because they didn't understand the difference, a tablespoon.
Not good.
You can see the drastic difference in the size between a tablespoon and a teaspoon. You need to make sure you are following the exact sizes. These are dry and liquid measurements. Now, all of our measurements are already made for us, so we're going to get rid of that. These are dry measurers. They are designed to measure dry ingredients like sugar, flour, different things like that. If you are measuring liquid measurements, you need to use a liquid measurement. The amount is different, okay? Liquid measurer. Okay, so let's get started into mini shortcakes with smashed strawberries. Our ingredients are all-purpose flour, sugar divided. Now, why it's divided is because part of it is used in the actual shortcake recipe. Part of it is actually used with the strawberries and our mint. We have baking powder and kosher salt, strawberries, mint, and heavy cream. So let's start into our shortcake. We have 3/4 cup of flour, sugar, 2 teaspoons of our 3 teaspoons. We have 2 teaspoons go in here. We have our baking powder, which is 1 teaspoon, not a tablespoon. We don't want bitter.
Yeah, don't do that.
Okay. And then it says kosher salt. So we're just going to add just a pinch of kosher salt. We're going to reuse that, so that'll stay there. And then we have butter. Now, we're going to take our butter. Let me back up. Make sure you wash your hands before you start cooking. Me and Maisie wash ours before we start. So we're going to cut our butter into little cubes. The colder, the better. This butter, because we're cooking and we've got these hot lights, is starting to melt already. But you want the butter, the colder, the better.
Should we get out the measuring tape and measure your butter slices?
No. Because we are not doing a small dice. We are just cutting the butter.
If you guys didn't see the first episode we did, he talked about how with his students, when they dice something, they have to all be the same so that it cooks evenly. But with this, since we're gonna mash it up into the dough, it doesn't matter.
So we're gonna put our butter in little cubes into our dough. We're gonna save this because we're gonna use it later. Now, me personally, I use a pastry cutter, but we're gonna follow our recipe and use a fork, and we're gonna kind of try to see how this works. And you cut this into the dough, and what you want is called a pea-sized sets of butter, and what we're making is the base of pastry dough. And all pastry dough is made like this. It's a fat and flour. Our fat happens to be butter. Some people use shortening, lard, things like that, but we use butter, and I prefer butter. It adds a nice flavor to whatever you're making.
Would the texture be different if they used something different, or would the
because the texture of the fat is different.
Okay.
It's not drastically different, but it does taste drastically different. Because it is, butter has a flavor to it. Shortening's got its own little flavor to it, and that's why they make butter flavored shortening. It's because people like It's because people like shortening, but they want the flavor of the butter.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So what you want is the butter into small pea-sized particles completely coated with flour. And again, a fork is working just fine. We're not having any problems with it. We're smashing it against the bottom, getting it as small as we possibly can. And when you're making pastry dough, avoid touching the dough as much as possible. You want those pea-sized particles. You want the butter to stay solid. And the more you touch it with your hands, the more it melts and the more it wants to liquefy. So we just want to make it small. Okay, so we now have our base of our pastry dough made.
Okay.
And we are going to add 6 tablespoons of heavy cream. Our butter amount was 3 tablespoons. Now, Mr. Crawford is really, really cheap, so he scrapes it all out.
The cream's important. It's going to make it come together, and it's going to make it taste good, so we got to make sure we get it all in there.
And we're going to be mixing it up. Again, we're not using our hands much unless we absolutely have to. Eventually, we will use our hands because we'll form it into a ball and then roll it out on the table.
We got to get it all mixed, and then we'll get it into a ball so that we can roll it out.
And we are still going to need some flour. We're going to have to throw some flour on our table.
Okay.
We're going to make a mess of our table here today, guys. So for some of us who are little kids at heart, making a mess is the best part of the day.
Yes.
We just don't like to clean up the mess, so we're going to make a mess by throwing some of it out there.
We're going to have flour everywhere by the end of this. It's going to be all over us, all over the table. So if their dough is too wet or too dry, is there something they can do to improve it?
If your dough is too wet, add flour very, very slowly. If your dough is too dry, add your liquid ingredient of the heavy cream very, very slowly.
Okay.
And what happens is if you just say, oh, I'll put in a tablespoon, well, maybe it only needed a teaspoon. Now it's back the other way, so you started out too dry, now it's too wet, and then it's too dry again, and then it's too wet, and you just keep going back and forth. And
you got to get the right ratio.
yeah. The easiest way is to just follow the recipe. And that's why we went over measuring, because if you would have started by tapping down the flour, you would have been too dry, and then you're like, now what do I do? So So we've got it to where it's just about ready to form into a ball. And you'll notice that it's getting close to being ready. It's not sticking to the bowl anymore. Okay, so, and it's actually starting to form into its own ball. I'm not even having to do anything. It's actually doing it itself. So we are ready to form it into a ball. Now we're going to keep this because we don't want to do as many dishes as possible, so we're going to hang on to that so we can use it to put our strawberries in when we cut our strawberries. So we are going to form it into a ball. Flour on your rolling pin so it doesn't stick. Yeah, and like you said, we're going to have flour everywhere. And we're going to roll this out.
You're supposed to roll it out to 1/3 of an inch thick into a circular round shape so that you can cut it. So that's what we're going to do. And if you don't have a rolling pin at home, I discovered this last night. You can use a glass. I put flour on my glass and then I was able to use it to roll it out because I didn't have a rolling pin at home.
So we've got about 1/3 of an inch.
You want it to be kind of a roundish shape.
So we're going to get it as close as we can. And then we are just simply going to take our knife and we're going to cut it into triangles. Now you might say, well, how do you cut it into triangles? It's actually not that difficult.
And you should have 10 shortcakes. That's what this recipe makes, is 10 servings.
So we got 2 of them.
Okay. I'll take the pan and I can arrange while you cut. So we've got our baking sheet that has just parchment paper on it.
Now how you cut these into triangles, where I cut these kind of straight, how you cut these into triangles is cut them at angles.
So they're going to be like little wedges of shortcakes.
There's 3 more.
Okay.
Have to fix it, I was cutting the wrong way. Actually, we're gonna.
Didn't Julia Child used to say something like that? She used to say something like, you drop it on the ground, then it's only you in the kitchen, so it's not gonna matter, you can just fix it. So we need 2 more.
Well,
There
we
we
got
go.
2 more of that size. We got these little extra pieces. If we were in a professional kitchen, they would actually figure out a way to put these all together and make it, add it to the next batch. We don't have to. You can actually do kind of a cool trick here. If you wanted to, for your kids to make little treats, roll these out and put cinnamon and sugar on them.
Be like little
And
shortcake
have dessert,
chips.
right? Have little shortcake treats for your kids, so they're kind of
That'd
cool.
be nice.
Okay. All right, so we have our oven on, and we are going to bake these in the oven at 350 degrees for 12 to 17 minutes.
So you're gonna wanna keep an eye on them so that they don't get too brown.
Okay, depending on each oven, every oven temperature is a little bit different. If you have different styles of ovens, they're going to be different. I have convection ovens at work,
And we're using a convection oven today.
and convection ovens cook faster because they cook with heat and air. Okay, so now we are on to our cutting of strawberries. So we have our bowl here. Evidently, Mr. Crawford needs to learn this 2% rule because I can't open up the strawberries.
Are you gonna tell them what the 2% rule is? I think you should tell them.
The 2% rule means that all you have to be is 2% smarter than what you're doing to work with it. Evidently, I wasn't 2% smarter than that plastic package at that moment in time. So we're going to try and get that out of the way so we can see what we're doing here. We're going to cut the tops of the strawberries off, throw them away.
Okay.
And then basically all we're going to do is cube the strawberries into little chunks. I like to cut them in half, cut them in half again.
So the flat side's down so it'll stay still while you're trying to cut it.
And then line them up and just cut them in little chunks.
And this is going to be what's going to make our, like when you normally make strawberry shortcake and you get the little strawberry juicy stuff.
So we're going to take the strawberries as we cut them, being safe, cutting one at a time.
And this recipe for the 10 shortcakes takes an entire basket of strawberries, so whatever that is for you.
Chef Smokin Bill would have a 2-pound basket because I really like strawberries.
The strawberries is one of the best parts of this.
We would be overwhelming the shortcakes. It would be like, Chef, do you have any strawberries with the shortcakes? No, we like strawberries.
It's the best part because then you put the sugar on them and they get all juicy and happy, and it makes like the little sauce so that when you eat them, it's good. If your strawberries are really little, you got to be really careful.
Now guys, I have to work really hard because I have a tendency to like to make noise when I do this, and I was informed that I'm not supposed to do that because it's distracting. So I'm having extreme difficulties right now.
Well, you gotta, I guess it's like an action movie. You know, when superheroes are like climbing over buildings, it's like, da-na-na-na-na-na.
That's why I hum.
You have action.
I have my action music.
Cutting action music.
I create
That's
it
what
myself.
we do on our TV show. So you're gonna cut the entire basket of strawberries. So then once they're all cut, you'll have your whole basket together. And what are we gonna add to the strawberries?
Sugar, a little bit of salt, and people might be like, why are you adding salt? Salt is known as one of the seasonings. There's actually only 2. The seasonings are salt and pepper. Salt in its purpose is not there to cover up the flavor of the food. Salt actually enhances the flavor of the food. So you add a little bit of salt to enhance the flavor of the food. Many of you might notice this because when you eat watermelon, a lot of people, when they eat watermelon, they put salt on it.
I think that's weird.
And some people think it's weird. My grandfather put salt on it, and I was like, why are you putting salt on it? And it does. It actually makes the watermelon sweeter.
So then, oh yeah, that one's no good. You gotta
always watch your strawberries.
For ones that are no good in the basket. That's what happens to them, you guys.
And that's just part of being strawberries or any kind of fruit or vegetable. Some of them will be bad.
So do you want me to cut the rest and you can talk about doing the mint?
Sure.
And I'll finish cutting these?
I will get this last one and then we'll move on to cutting.
That goes over here.
See, there I am again, trying to make my noises.
Cutting action. That could be, if you were an action
maybe
figure,
what I should
that
do
could
is,
be your thing, like your arm would move up and down.
You know what? I'll turn it into a horror movie. Hold on, I'll give you this in a second. Turn it into more. Didn't, slash.
Okay, so I'm gonna finish cutting the strawberries, and Bill's gonna talk about what you guys will do after you get the strawberries all cut. And then there's also sort of a little fancy thing that the recipe talks about you can do for a garnish, and we'll talk about that.
Okay, so this is mint. It wants us to take off 2 or 3 little leaves, and we're gonna steal the knife for a second. And it says take off 2 or 3 leaves. We're gonna put it back in there.
Our mint is kind of sad, isn't it?
When you buy fresh herbs, they have to stay in a refrigerator all the time. If you don't leave them in a refrigerator, they'll wilt really, really fast.
Like that, which
Like
they've
that.
been sitting out here for just a little bit while we've been prepping, and it's really hot in here under all these lights.
Now, if you notice in the past, I've been like this when I've been chopping or cutting. That's when we're making things. When you're actually chopping, your hand goes on top of the blade. You want to keep your fingers away from the blade. And we are going to finely chop the mint. And if you keep going, you will actually mince the mint. And we're not going to do that, so we're going to give the knife back to
that sounds like
mint.
a pie.
Okay, this is known as a mortar, and I just want to make sure it's right, a mortar and a pestle. So we're going to put the mint in there with a pinch of sugar, and we're going to smash the mint. We're going to make it into little teeny tiny pieces. Oh, I need to give you the strawberries.
I'll take them.
And we're going to mash them into little teeny pieces. And this doesn't take really long. If you don't have this, just add it to the strawberries.
Once you chop it, and it'll be just fine. This is just to make it a little bit fancier.
This doesn't take that long, so we're going to set this to the side, because this...
I keep trying to put the strawberry top in the bowl, you guys. You're not going to want to eat that. Don't do that. But I keep trying to do it because the bowl is very conveniently located next to me.
I'm not a big fan of this mortar.
Oh, it's mushed it all in there.
It has little grooves in it.
Oh.
Okay, you see how this has got little grooves in it? I like them when they're smooth because see what's happening to the mint? It wants to stick down inside the grooves, which means you lose some of your product that you're trying to crush up.
So normally when you buy a mortar and a pestle, it's smooth, but could they also maybe use like a spoon in a bowl?
Yes,
if they didn't have a mortar and a pestle.
You could use a spoon in a bowl, just something that's really hard. Something that's really hard. So we have our mint ready. Okay, and we're going to take our mint, put it in with our diced strawberries.
Which I'm almost done cutting. Go ahead and throw it in there. And is the mint just it's gonna add flavor to the strawberries, right? It's gonna give them like a little bite?
Mm-hmm. It adds an alternative flavor. Whenever you're making food, there are 4 flavors that they want us to focus on. The 4 flavors are sweet, sour, bitter, and salty. And if you've ever heard, I watch it on a cooking show where the people doing the sampling go, wow, that was like a party in my mouth. That means they had all 4 of those flavors in that food product.
Isn't that like umami or something?
Something like that.
Something like that. Don't they call it that, you guys? Okay. And then we're going to put the rest of the sugar.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
As soon as you get done cutting them.
There you are.
Okay, so we have our strawberries. We're going to put in the rest of the sugar. And again, just a pinch of salt. Not much, just a pinch of salt. And you can either use this if you wanted to. You could use this to smash it. But we're going to follow our recipe. The recipe says use a fork.
Those over there.
So we're just going to start.
Okay.
Okay, so we have our strawberries, so we're going to start with that. And normally we would keep going with that, but we have some that have been marinating in the sugar.
Overnight.
And we like to leave them marinating in the sugar because it helps it flavor them. And you'll notice that the strawberries will actually start to get softer.
So one of our viewers, you guys, bought us this really cute little chicken oven mitt to use on our show.
They bought us a chicken oven mitt. We really appreciate the chicken oven mitt. So we are going to use our chicken oven mitt to remove the shortcakes.
That was a great chicken voice. So we're going to pull.
We burned my mouth.
And we're going to plate them up.
Now they are still hot.
So you got to be careful.
So we're going to be careful.
And we'll.
Hand me the fork.
Oh.
Or a spoon. No, a spoon. And we're just going to take some of the
strawberries and put it on there.
And cream. And I like chunks of strawberries. That's why I didn't smash them completely.
Okay. And then we're going to top them with Ready Whip topping. Do you want to tell them why we're not going to use Cool Whip?
Well, let me finish plating this last one here and putting our strawberries on it. And I'm putting extra strawberries because, like I said, I really like strawberries. They're one of my favorite
Your
things.
ratio of strawberry to shortcake is a little funky.
And like I said, it should be like Chef Smokin Bill, is there any shortcake under there? I'm going to read the ingredients. Here's why I don't like Cool Whip. It's not really healthy to me. Let me read the ingredients. And the ingredients are in the order that they are in their amounts, if you didn't know that. Cool Whip, water, corn syrup, hydrogenated vegetable oil. Basically, Cool Whip is just shortening
That they whip with
that
sugar.
they whip with sugar.
And this one, so this one's the Ready Whip. This one says cream, water, sugar, corn syrup, non-fat milk.
So this one is actually more healthy for you because it actually contains real cream and real milk.
We'll put a little bit on top there. And if you have mint left over, you could garnish and be fancy with a little mint leaf. But we're just gonna scarf this, so I don't think we're gonna do that.
We thank you for watching today, and we're gonna sample this really quick.
And we'll see what it tastes like. So the strawberries got a little bit of juice, and then your shortcakes are kind of crumbly on the outside.
That's
which
really
turned out
good.
really good.
That's fantastic. We need more strawberries.
We're gonna do more strawberries over here, guys, but we will see you guys next time.
And more
Thanks
whipped
for
cream.
watching. Bye.